All right, welcome everybody. Today we are going to discuss the impact of sleep and sleep disturbance on your immune system and your antiviral defenses. And this is very relevant in the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2 discussion, because while uh, some of you out there may be waiting for the magic bullet to be created, there are things we can do right now for our lifestyle and for our overall health to help us prevent the infection or recover from it better, even if we don't have a magic bullet from the pharmaceutical companies. So, as always, this is for informational purposes only. Please talk to your primary care physician if you're going to make any changes based on this call. If you're watching a recording of this call, this info may not be up to date, so don't hold us to that. Research for the most up-to-date info, and then we make no guarantees on the completeness or accuracy of this info. We're doing the best we can with the research we have. So, with that said, the study I want to focus on today was in Nature Reviews Immunology at the end of 2019, and it's called Sleep and Inflammation Partners in Sickness and in Health. And in conventional medicine, it's very specialized, right? You go to a general practitioner and they're going to send you off to a specialist depending on what you're complaining of. And part of the reason that doesn't work for chronic disease is because chronic disease is all interconnected. You are one human being with maybe multiple symptoms, but they don't exist in a vacuum separate from each other. So whereas conventional medicine could miss being able to help you because a cardiologist doesn't speak to an endocrinologist, who doesn't speak to, say, a gastroenterologist, from a functional medicine perspective, we want to look at all of that in one so we can find things that they don't, because we're more of a generalist or a holistic view versus a specialized view. That same view applies, the research is bearing out, in your physiology in terms of how sleep impacts inflammation via immune connections and how stress plays into all of this. So we're going to dive into that today. And just in the first paragraph here on the study, the abstract, it says sleep enhances immune defenses and signals from the immune cells promote optimal sleep. So it's a bidirectional relationship. Sleep, immune system, sleep, they affect each other. Chronic social threats can drive the development of sleep disturbances in humans, which can contribute to the dysregulation of inflammatory and antiviral responses. So what that says is basically chronic stress can drive your sleep disturbance, and that sleep disturbance can contribute to more inflammation and making you worse at fighting viruses. So is there a chronic social threat going on right now that may decrease your viral response? Yes, it's spelled COVID, right? So we've all been exposed for the last 6+ weeks to a chronic social threat. If you are watching the news or talking to anyone outside your family, the topic is, oh, the pandemic, everyone's going to die. What do we do about it? Whether or not that's true, if you're constantly hearing that message, that's a social threat. That's a psychological threat that triggers stress physiology and then could end up in sleep disturbance and immune suppression, so hurting your ability to recover from the virus if you're exposed. So the authors here, we have someone joining us here, excuse me, but the authors go on to say at the end there, therefore, there's a therapeutic potential of using the sleep immune crosstalk to help us fight viruses. So they give us some information that 1/4 of adults in the United States deal with insomnia. Insomnia increases the risk of depression and inflammatory disorders and infection, and it contributes to all-cause mortality, which is your risk of death from all causes. The regulation of sleep is homeostatically linked to the immune system and to the circadian timing of inflammatory cytokine release. So you can't separate your immune system from your sleep patterns. If you affect one, you're going to affect the other. And so they go on to say, in response to chronic stress, humans manifest, in response to chronic stressors in humans, sleep disturbance leads to increased inflammation at the expense of antiviral immune responses. So if we are scared of coronavirus because we're watching the news all day, every day, that may cause us to lose sleep. If you, for example, I was speaking with a patient last week who said, before I go to bed, or in the evening, I fall asleep on the couch. Before I go to bed, I wake up and I watch the news, and then I have trouble motoring down to fall back to sleep. Well, why? A, you're watching the news that's driving high anxiety, reporting on COVID deaths, and you should never go outside, et cetera, et cetera. B, you just watched it on a device that's emitting blue light, and lots of research says that blue light stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, which is the stress response system. And so there's a double whammy there that's disturbing your sleep now, increasing your inflammation, and decreasing your ability to fight the viruses. So watching TV at all, or any device, a phone, an iPad, anything emitting blue light before bed, is working against optimal sleep for you. And if you're watching something stressful, it's even worse. So let's go on here. Inflammatory response to sleep. When sleep is disturbed, changes to the effector systems that regulate the immune system occur, which can drive abnormal increases in inflammatory response. So disturbed sleep, increased inflammation. And one thing to know is healthy sleep means you get into what's called slow wave sleep. Slow wave sleep is delta waves on an EEG, and those are the waves that the brain needs to get its rest so your neurons can rest and recover and heal from what they face during the day. So if you're stressed, if you're sleep deprived, if you're inflamed, you get less slow wave sleep, more REM sleep, and so you're more inflamed and fighting viruses worse. You can see here, sleep deprivation shifts the pattern of interleukin-6 from a nighttime pattern to a daytime pattern. What does that mean? Interleukin-6 is one of the pro-inflammatory cytokines made by the body when you're inflamed. And so normally, you can see up here, normally in a normal sleep pattern, systemic levels of interleukin-6 have a circadian rhythm, and they're highest at, let's see, 7 p.m. and at 5 a.m. Well, studies show that if you're sleep deprived, that pattern shifts from a nighttime pattern to a daytime pattern. So you go from being inflamed at night, which helps you kill infections at night while you're sleeping, to being inflamed during the day when you shouldn't be. And this increased inflammation can lead to all kinds of issues, as we'll see. Next page here. All right, so sleep disturbance. When the threat perceived by the central nervous system is chronic, lasting days to weeks or longer in humans, a maladaptive profile of sleep occurs, referred to as sleep disturbance. So again, let's back up. The threat, what is that? Any stressor. But right now in our environment, that threat may be the coronavirus, right? And the news reporting that, the social isolation, you miss your family, you miss your grandkids, you miss whoever you miss. Maybe it's the threat of you've lost your job because of the coronavirus, and there's financial threat there, or financial stressors. There's lots of current stressors. So that is going to be perceived by your brain, and when it's chronic, lasting days to weeks or longer, well, we're at what, 6-8 weeks so far, and this thing dragging on. So it has become chronic. Then maladaptive sleep occurs, or sleep disturbance. Know that sleep disturbance doesn't necessarily mean insomnia. Okay, insomnia is you aren't sleeping for 3 or more days of the week, whereas sleep disturbance means, hey, maybe you only got 5 hours last night. Okay, so there's a difference between the two. And if you want let's just give you the definition of insomnia, as these authors called it: difficulty initiating or maintaining sleep, early awakening, interrupted or non-restorative sleep, and associated impairments in daytime function. So maybe brain fog, difficulty concentrating, fatigue. This must be present for 3 nights per week and last 3 months or longer. So that's how they're defining insomnia in this study. But sleep disturbance could be just 1 night of 5 hours or less. and they describe it here. Sleep disturbance, a condition defined as insomnia complaints with daytime consequences, dissatisfied with sleep quality or quantity, and/or insomnia disorder. So sleep disturbance could include insomnia or be less than that. All right, back to it. Let's go to the picture, because I tend to spend more time on the minutia than you guys probably care about. So here's the picture. Here's healthy sleep. All right. So in a healthy situation where you're getting healthy sleep and you're facing an acute stressor, you can deal, right? In the periphery, which is the rest of your body, you're going to produce, if you're faced with a stressor like cellular stress or an acute inflammatory exposure, like a tissue injury, or you have acute sleep deprivation, or you have a pathogen, a viral infection, you're going to create inflammatory cytokines, you're going to create antimicrobials naturally, you're going to create antivirals naturally. That will lead to the brain experiencing increased sleep and increased sleep efficiency, increased slow wave sleep, decreased REM sleep. So you might think, well, why am I going to have increased sleep if I'm infected? Well, because you need to heal, right? And we're our best healers when we're sleeping. So you may have had the flu before, and typical sickness behavior, as they call it, is you're more lethargic, you sleep more, you have a decreased appetite, right? Because you're focusing all the energies on healing. So that's normal and healthy. And part of that is an increased antiviral response. So the healthy response is that you're going to exhibit that sickness behavior for a day or two. You're going to sleep more, you're going to eat less, you're going to be a little fatigued, and that way you're probably not going to be moving around as much, so your body can spend its resources on clearing the infection. You survive the infection and off you go. So these authors state that the ability of insomnia treatment to reduce levels of inflammation is comparable to anti-inflammatory effects of healthy diet and exercise. So basically what they're saying is healthy sleep is just as important for you from an inflammatory standpoint as a healthy diet and exercise. So if you're not sleeping properly, but you're nailing your diet and you're nailing your exercise, you could be better. And that third piece, that sleep piece, is where you need to improve. So here is a picture of pathways linked to chronic stress, okay? So this is the environment we're in right now with the COVID. Physical and social environment. Maybe there's social adversity or social threat. That's coronavirus, right? Socially, everything's different. Yesterday, I was at Whole Foods. I was next in line to check out and buy my stuff. The guy in front of me, I must have been, 5 feet from him instead of 6. He had gloves on and all this, and he was like, I think they have spaces laid out for where we should stand. And I was like, why don't you just step forward a step? Like people are just so heightened right now. Even when they're not stressed, they're stressed, right? He's like watching how close is everyone standing to him. He's got his gloves on, all that. That's something we've never in our lives paid attention to. That's an extra level of focus and stress that doesn't need to be there. So that's been going on 6-8 weeks. It qualifies as chronic. If you also have a subclinical inflammatory disease, say you have something something wrong with you that isn't diagnosed yet, or you have an infection that isn't overtly acute, say Epstein-Barr virus reactivation, or cytomegalovirus reactivation, or a cold sore from herpes simplex 1 reactivation, that can be an organismal stress. And then maybe you have a chronic bacterial infection or viral infection. The chronic viral would be the Epstein-Barr, like I said, or HSV. Chronic bacterial infection could be a dysbiosis in your gut, right? Maybe there's H. pylori, maybe there's Klebsiella, maybe you're lacking probiotics, so there's a relative dysbiosis. All of these things lead to chronic inflammation, and that chronic inflammation may result in sleep disturbance. And so now we go in that vicious cycle, and that vicious cycle leads to increased inflammation and increases our risk of Alzheimer's and depression and the chronic inflammatory diseases. And that chronic inflammation also leads to decreased antiviral responses. So now, if you get a vaccine, you're not going to respond to it as well as you would have if you weren't chronically stressed or sleep deprived. Now you're more susceptible to viral infections, from common cold to flu to coronavirus, since they're all related upper respiratory infections, and probably enteroviruses as well. And then you're more susceptible to pneumonia. So again, if your goal is to prevent and or recover from infections at all, including coronavirus, then you must be nailing your sleep. If you're staying up to watch the latest news and you're sacrificing sleep for that, that's a double whammy. Okay. So the goal you want to shoot for is optimal sleep. You can wake up and watch the news tomorrow. It's not going to change a whole lot. And you win before midnight. So the hours before midnight sleep-wise are where you're going to win. So instead of staying up for the 10 o'clock news, be in bed by 10, wake up tomorrow, all the info will be there that you're looking for. Sleeping from 10 to 6 is not the same as sleeping from midnight to 8 a.m. Okay, so remember, there's a circadian rhythm to our sleep. We want to be nailing that. And evolutionarily, it's humans have tied or become entrained to the light-dark cycle of the sun. So you want to be following that as best you can, not staying up till midnight or after and then going to sleep and thinking sleeping longer in the morning is going to help. So nail that sleep, along with, as we've talked about previously, diet, exercise, all the lifestyle factors we've mentioned. Last thing, just to nail it home for you, with regard to infection risk, the authors say, short sleep duration predicts pneumonia risk, and short sleep duration is defined by less than 5 hours of sleep per night. And it also predicts susceptibility to common cold. So if you have less than 6 hours of sleep per night or less than 5 hours of sleep per night, you're at a higher risk of common cold or pneumonia, respectively. In a retrospective study of about 23,000 adults, those who reported persistent short sleep duration, less than 5 hours per night, also reported an increased likelihood of cold or infection in the past 30 days. So again, you must be getting more than 5 or 6 hours, okay? Otherwise, you have increased risk of infection. And like I said, in this environment, that's not helping us with our goal, which is to avoid coronavirus infection or to recover optimally if we are exposed. So that's the topic for today. I'll open it up for questions here. Let me unmute everybody. And go ahead.
No surprises here.
Yeah. I mean, it makes intuitive sense, and we've all pretty much experienced it, even if you haven't ever read a study, you've probably noticed, yes, I'm more tired when I have the flu. Yes, I want to sleep more, on nights that I stay up too late doing things I know I shouldn't, I feel worse. And at the right time of year, you might even get sick. How about Louise? Louise, any question? I see you there.
Hey, Dr. Bartemus. It took me a while to figure out how to get on. I can only get on my cell phone. I don't know why I couldn't access my laptop. But
Okay.
Will you record this so we can watch it later on YouTube if we miss something?
Yep, I have it recorded, so I can send you the link. Yep.
Okay, that would be great.
For the parts that you heard, do you have any questions?
No, this is what you've been telling me, so I need to just heed the lessons that you're teaching me.
Yes, ma'am. It's I'm not making it up.
I know that. I trust you completely.
I know, and thank you for that. And on the recording, you'll be able to see the study I was referring to in the picture, so that should make it a little bit easier for you as well. What else? Any other questions?
No, well, no questions at all. I mean, sleep is the kingpin for our health in general. It's, absolutely the most fundamental part of, well, arguably the most fundamental part. It's certainly right up there with the most important part. When I retired, I discovered that the thing that I didn't know was impacting me the most was my lack of sleep, because I had a job that I just had such late meetings and really didn't sleep that much. Mm-hmm. And people asked me like what I was doing that I looked so wonderful. And it's like, I'm sleeping. That's what I'm doing now that I've retired.
Yes. Yeah, it's a It's a big deal. And let me ask you this: did you have some lag time between when you retired and when you looked better or felt better? Right. So you had years of sleep disturbance, and then you.
I did, but this will might surprise you. On the other hand, it kind of is the way I am. It's like I adjust quickly. So the day after I retired, I slept 2 more hours, and every day thereafter, so instantly I started sleeping more.
Yeah.
And I would say I started to look better within weeks.
Yep. Good. Good. So that's one thing I've experienced, and I'm sure Louise you've experienced, and Linda too, is, you know, a lot of times it takes, our bodies are very resilient, right? So we can pound them and be bad to them for years and still be okay. And it may take us looking at a picture of ourselves 5-10 years ago to be like, wow, I really have aged, or I'm out of shape or whatever. So we're resilient, and it can take some time for us to notice those negative changes. But in incorporating the positive changes, oftentimes it doesn't take equal amounts of time to yield the positive benefits, right? Those come back quick. It's like the body's just saying, do the right thing and I'll show you, right?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, the drop in the cortisol changed the belly fat, and that was something that happened over time. But my face and my skin and the brightness, you know, in my eyes, that was practically immediate.
How about your pain levels?
I've never really had too much of any kind of pain. Though I have limited amounts of arthritis pain, but it's so limited that it hasn't impacted until recently in one joint. I would say that my pain really didn't impact my life at all, and it didn't really change that much afterwards. And I maybe the quality of my diet helped.
Yeah, yeah. Also, for those out there, we didn't touch on it a bunch, but there's clear connections between your sleep and your cognitive function, or your sleep and your mood, or psychology. So sleep deprivation, as it says, drives up inflammation, and chronic inflammation drives anxiety, depression, and those things. So it's, if you're someone out there dealing with an anxiety, depression type of issue, and you're not sleeping well, you may notice more benefit from optimizing your sleep than maybe from an SSRI or one of those medications. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you for being on and for interacting, and we'll get this recorded and uploaded, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Thanks a bunch.
Dr. Bartemus.
Welcome.
Have a great day.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye.